Hi and welcome to the Snooze Strategist. This is the show where we share with you how to be more focused, rested and productive by providing strategies to manage your energy levels through better sleep. I'm Alex and this is Ashen. This is our 10th episode and we're going to do something a little bit different. So Ashen, 9 episodes in, well, this is the 10th one. Let's talk a little bit, or let's reflect a little bit on what we've learned over the course of it's been about a month and a little bit now. It's a good opportunity to sort of, reflect on what we've learned and through this process, but also about sleep. But more importantly, a bit of the background of why have we pulled this together, and a little bit about your background will be interesting, as well as this fairly significant crisis that we as a nation in Australia have got around sleep, if not globally. Where should we begin?
Yeah, I guess we can start with why Snooze Strategist was born, and maybe then we can slowly get into the problems and I guess our experience with sleep as well.
Or lack of sleep.
Lack of sleep, that's true. For me, I think coming from the sleep background and worked in sleep for years, I always had the problem with, like, this, people keep doing research or people keep talking about it, but how do we apply that? I think and we've been talking for a long time about this as well, so I think this was a great opportunity for me to bring in what kind of I've learned over the years and what I see are the problems in the system that and kind of educate the people and hopefully change some lives. Because for me, the biggest problem is, I mean, there are economic cost, all health cost and all these things, but for me, the biggest issue is the quality of life, and people don't even realize that they're functioning at a reduced quality of life. I think that's the part that really bothers me, and hopefully we can impact in that aspect for few people or few of our listeners.
So it's the frustration of a problem that potentially is easy to solve if it's something that we prioritized.
Yeah, absolutely, that's right. I think if you get a chest pain, for an example, I think you would definitely rush and speak to your GP and get all these tests done and try to fix it. But if you're feeling if you're feeling tired, or if you keep yawning during the daytime, usually you would just have a cup of coffee and just move on and kind of pushes through or suffers through it, and you don't even realize it. But for most people, that's their regular life for 10, 20, 30 years, and they don't realize that there's some issues going on. I think that's an unfortunate part of sleep and the sleep medicine overall.
There's definitely, and I guess because that's been a vocation for you, it's only in the last 2 years that you've been actually out of being in the hospital system, running a sleep lab, conducting the research. So you're in the innovation space, still in healthcare, but it's really it's been most of your working life living in this space of understanding how to improve people's lives.
Yeah, that's right. I got into sleep almost by accident, and I got just curious what this about, and I started after pretty much after my uni, started working in sleep. But more I started learning about it, I just invested in myself and kind of learn about the clinical aspect of sleep and what the impact. And I think my passion was around the kind of daytime alertness or daytime sleepiness, because that's where for me the biggest quality of life impact comes in, and also that's where the biggest economic impact of sleep comes in. So I worked in both public and private health for 7, 8, 9 years, and I got into research hoping that's the best way to do a bit of impact. But I realized people can keep doing research, but that's not going to translate into action. I think there has to be a bigger movement to bring all these learnings from research to action.
Yeah,
I think kind of moved on from research and get into other aspects of work.
Yeah, and the type of people that you've helped, I'm curious about that. So
Yeah.
you know, I'm looking at from either, you know, I can share a little bit about, you know, being a startup founder, but also working corporate. The kind of people that you've helped support through the work you've done in hospital, what sort of walks of life have they come from?
I think it's pretty much all over the place. I've seen a lot of the late teens, like the kids coming in with sleep issues. One, it's quite unfortunate, to be honest. You see parents just basically thinking these kids are lazy, but eventually getting the help they need and realizing no, there are actual medical conditions associated with that. Other than that, you see a lot of people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different socioeconomic backgrounds, coming in trying to fix things. Some have realized they have issues by accident. Like I've seen many people who go into surgeries to address other issues and then realize they have sleep-related issues. I've seen many professionals, like business people, who are tired during the day trying to run their business or work in their corporate jobs, and so trying to address there. But I feel like most, or the biggest majority, or the biggest portion of the patients I've seen, they're just coming in a bit of peer pressure situation. Sometimes they keep snoring during the night. So the partner pushes them to go and get something sorted. Or it's related to, once again, work that they can't perform during the work, whether it's operating a machinery or doing a desk job that they can't stay up or stay awake. So it's a bit of a mixed bag from my experience.
It's interesting that we were digging into the Parliamentary Inquiry report a bit early, so we can dig into that a little bit later. But you know, if you're an office worker, or if you work in, you know, a technology space, you can probably get away with less sleep and not being, when you won't have that workplace injury in the same way that you may have in construction or aviation or even health. I mean, health now it's becoming more accepted. And by accepted, I mean understood that healthcare workers also have significant strain, and lack of sleep in the hospital system is equally impactful from a burnout perspective. And we're already seeing the workforce impact in Australia there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. I think it's a very good point. People who usually do office works, because they can get away, or there's a risk of injury or causing an issue is low, there's no pressure for them to actually go and identify or try to fix their problems they have as well.
That's quite similar to mental health as well, isn't it? Where people are less likely to say, I recognize something doesn't feel right here, versus family or friends may give them a nudge.
Yeah, that's true. You're absolutely right. I've seen that in mental health space, where most of the time it's just that family and friends kind of pushing them or almost bringing them to kind of facilities and try to get the help they need. And I think we touched a few times about the community aspect of sleep and alertness. And I think that's where you probably have to work as a team, whether it's your partner need a bit of help or the work colleague need a bit of help. Probably like, you know, work managers or leaders have that conversation and work as a team. So you don't feel like it's a taboo, because it's still a thing where sleeping is not, the people don't identify it's an issue. So I think some people may have a bit of resistance to bring that, can say, oh, I don't think I can sleep at night, or I don't even have enough sleep at night. Definitely having some support will help you to make necessary changes for your lifestyle or the work.
And that ties in with that presenteeism that we have here in Australia, in terms of, you know, you may either be sick or not 100% and still feel like there's some pressure to be present, be visible.
That's right.
Effective or not, you're here, and I think culturally as well. You won't often hear someone saying, "Oh, go home, you look a bit tired." I think it's slowly creeping in now, but it's also you're a bit weak. You're a bit
That's
weak.
Right.
If you need a nap, and we're in a different work culture at the moment. We're not in corporate, but you can see where there'll be some work cultures that would err on the side of toughness is important,
For
and
sure.
displaying strength in the workplace through, whether it's personality or whether it's hey, that person never sleeps. Oh, good on them. We should all be like that. It's like, that's the current status quo, working harder rather than working smarter.
Yeah, that's true. And you see that quite a bit in kind of entrepreneurship space as well. We almost glorify not sleeping and working all the time. But I think people should understand there's so much to life other than work, even though it could be a good driver for you to keep going. That's maybe only thing that kind of make you get out of the bed. But people really should, I think, prioritize their personal life and build work and everything else kind of around your sleep and your health and well-being. But unfortunately, there's still that kind of stigma around it. Is it a sign of weakness if I say, oh no, I need 8 hours of sleep? Oh no, I'm tired, I need to go and have a nap.
That's the issue. And maybe now is the right time after 3 years of having experienced COVID. Last year was still coming out of it, but even now, just now, a family friend unfortunately got COVID. It's still there in the community. It hasn't disappeared, and we're still adapting our lives to it. And workplace as well is still impacting. So this question of what's the workplace of the future, what's the right workforce, how do we work, ways of working, they're really compelling, and we haven't quite landed on it yet, but that's the opportunity, right? To say, how might we build work around us as human beings and what we need in our community and family and those sort of things.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's a perfect opportunity to redesign how people work. I guess one of the good things about COVID is that introduction of hybrid work, and for the longest period of time, lot of the managers had that. I think some still do that. Had the mentality, I must see my staff so I know that they are working. But there's no merit to it. You can still see staff and they may not be productive. I think there are a lot of leadership lessons you can learn from it. And the times have changed. We survived 2-3 years now with remote working or hybrid working.
That's true. Yeah.
And companies didn't go down because of the hybrid work. I think employee satisfaction went up and people are happier at work to the level I've seen many job ads now specify whether it's hybrid work or on-site work. But I think we really should take it to the next level where hybrid doesn't necessarily mean working from the office and work. I think so. We are not just a location aspect of work, like the flexibility should really be given to more have a personalized sort of work rather than we kind of mold people into how the business should want their kind of employees to work. But absolutely right. This is the right time. Hopefully we can start a movement and push that change through.
Yeah, I have to say that, I mean, the interest for me here is really that both from a leadership perspective, in whether it's in corporate or as a startup founder, the recognition of the need for balance. And I have been, my first startup was back in 2001, early 2000s, during the days of social networks first starting to kick off. And the habits I developed as a first-time founder in terms of working nonstop, because if you don't get it done, who else is going to get it done? Who's going to do the marketing, the finance, this, and this? So you get into a habit of never being able to switch off. And while you're in your 20s, that seems to be okay. Your body can sort of, recover. It's highly resilient. but you develop a habit that doesn't go away easily, and then you start, as I did, getting a job in corporate, and you've brought that habit along. And that was when I was in my 30s. And then you start going, actually, your body doesn't want to keep up anymore or can't. And then you start having other impacts. So sleep definitely was a challenge for me. And the only answer was sleeping pills for a period of time until those ran out. And then it became, okay, we need some more professional help to sort of support here. But even now, it's interesting that you put me onto the, as we said, I need to experiment upon myself as well. I don't have all the answers. I'm looking to you, Ashen, for them.
Yeah,
but we did the 2-week sleep diary. So that's been fascinating, and waiting for your full analysis. But just looking at it, it's quite clear that I'm sleeping anywhere between 3 to 7 hours a night, which I kind of knew, but once I had written it down, it's like, actually, this is not healthy. And as I said earlier, this doesn't show up on a blood test. I can still play with the kids. I still feel like I can do things. I'm still performing in the workplace, but I know, and I've said this to you before, I don't feel as focused or as sharp at times. And I will utilize that after lunch nap every now and again. But these are kind of like the band-aids to, well, why don't you just get up your sleep? And you sort of, I showed you the walkthrough of my evening plans. It's like, well, I like to do startup work. I like to do this work. I like to do that work on this podcast thingy, So it's about how to achieve the balance amongst all that. So this is really compelling for me because I'm learning a lot through the process of talking to you. But this is also laddering up to understanding the national challenge. And I didn't know, I'm certainly not alone. It's a national issue when it comes to lack of sleep, or what they call inadequate sleep. So I don't have any sleep disorders, but it's certainly, if not totally, in my control to address this problem. And there's many other Australians that are under the same situation. It's in their capability to solve for their own problem. There's a whole bunch of Aussies that it may be a sleep disorder or pathological. So that's a different bucket of challenges. But that's fascinating to understand just how big a problem it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just in Australia, like it's all over the world. And I think I was reading just before, the US, the economic cost of insufficient sleep is around $410 billion a year. That's just crazy. It's incredible amount of cost to the society, and people sometimes don't even realize it. I think in US, about 35% of the population sleep less than 7 hours a night, and half of the population is sleepy during daytime. Imagine that. It's the impact it has on the quality of your life, the real impact on the relationships, and we know when you sleep less, it impacts your mood. People can get more agitated, more stressed, and that will go into the relationships you're having with your kids, your spouse, even at the work, with work colleagues or your customers. It's not, if you can sleep longer, I think a lot of these issues can be addressed and impact on the mental health. So there is definitely a serious problem here that need attention and definitely some action from government level.
I might pull up the Parliamentary Inquiry report. I'll have a quick look at some key snippets. I don't want it to be too boring, because government reports can be, but this is quite interesting. It's interesting to sort of like call out some key things here. In particular, it's the quantification, and this sort of also helps me recognize just how important it is, because I think if you told anyone that we've got a national crisis when it comes to sleeping or inadequate sleep, most people go, "Oh, okay, really? Is it a thing?"
Yeah.
Don't we have more important things to worry about? And it's like, well, that's a good question. Like, where does this sit in the scale of chronic disease when it comes to mental health, when it comes to robo debt. There's all sorts of societal challenges at the moment.
And this basically says about 40% of the population they're not having enough quality sleep. So it's almost half the population, right? And what people don't realize it, sleeping is not just shutting down for the night. The impact of sleep, it has impact on your obesity, it has impact on mental health, other disorders like your diabetes or your cholesterol. So it's linked to everything, and your daytime energy, mood. So if you fix sleep, if you have some good quality sleep, I'm not saying sleep will fix your whole life, but that will make your life so much easier. And as you mentioned before, you don't have to work hard, you can work smart. You can definitely do the amount of work you're doing now, pushing the hours probably a lot earlier, make some high quality decisions. But it's great that these reports are coming in. And in the past, I think Deloitte has published few in Australia as well in the last 20 years. So there are some good quality reports. There's numbers and data. Now it's time for the actions, I think.
Yeah. And that's an interesting point you made, that it won't fix your life, but this is the baseline that you should have.
That's right.
In a good night's sleep is the minimum that you should have to do the best that you can throughout the day, whether it's relationships, whether it's friendship, whether it's work, right? If you don't even have that, then you're already, behind the eight ball, as they say. You're already starting out and then it's in your control that, well, I keep saying that, and yet it's clearly not it. I'm not doing a good job controlling my own sleep. But just a little bit of background for this report. So this was in 2019. This is the most recent inquiry. So here in Australia, there was a submission or a request to conduct a parliamentary inquiry, which is an opportunity for the public to submit into an issue of importance. And the resulting document was called Bedtime Reading, Inquiry into Sleep Health Awareness in Australia. The problem I'm showing the screen here, the main thing I've noticed here is the almost 4 in every 10 Australians are regularly not having enough quality sleep. That was the key call out. But then also, as you mentioned, the report from Deloitte sort of called out that $66.3 billion cost impact. Part of that is pathological sleep disorders, which are the what was that? That was the 40 billion. So there's a health cost, and then the 26 billion is inadequate sleep. So that's a lot, 26.2 billion in the years of 2016 to 2017, impacting 7.4 million Australians when it comes to workplace things that kind of in your control to address. So it's a pretty massive quantification of impact there.
Yeah, well, this is really compelling, and I think they have broken down it nicely as well. There's an issue. We have facts to prove it, I think, and you're right. It's up to the individual to make actions, but perhaps these are the conversations now people can have with one another, like your work colleagues, your family members. Are you having a good sleep? Maybe that's how this should be addressed.
It's a good point. So that's part of the reflection discussion that we've been having in the background around, as part of preparing this channel and doing our homework and looking at what are the kind of often discussed tips and techniques. Quite often they're not enough on their own, and they're quite dependent on your own self-awareness and motivation. And we know that we're not always the most strongest when it comes to whether it's quitting smoking or, reducing how much beer you have, all that sort of thing. Just it's human nature that there's certain things that we're a little bit weak at.
Yeah, that's right. I know, absolutely.
I thought this was interesting that they do mention, Professor Matthew Walker, and in the report, his book Why We Sleep, in particular because he's been on social media a lot. There's been a number of authors who have popped up. Sleep is slowly becoming topical, which is a really good thing. It needs to be part of general public conversation. So I like this, what they've called out from his book, that he suggested that society's apathy towards sleep has in part been caused by the historic failure of science to explain why we need it. Sleep has remained one of the last great biological mysteries.
Yeah, it's a couple of things. I think rise of Matthew Walker's, or the popularity of this book, really changed the societal kind of view of sleep, because he really went into the impact of sleep and why we should all improve our sleep. But more than that, I think this quote, the Parliamentary Inquiry report, had sleep medicine. It's a relatively new field, even though these issues has been there for forever. I think that's one of the issues. We still don't really fully understand how sleep works. There are a lot of mysteries around it. And other issue with sleep is that because we sleep, everyone sleeps every day, so that's something we don't care about, and it's just part of our lives. So it's not a big deal for most of the people. But yeah, this is great, I think. And you're right, there are more books popping up. That definitely we hear about sleep a bit more now, but there's a lot of work yet to be done.
And I think this is really important in terms of introducing a concept into popular culture. And when you think of, you talked about research and the frustration in the world of research to actually have an impact. So whether it's CSIRO or any body in Australia that does research, there's always going to be a challenge in translating that to some practical outcome, which has a commercial component, because you quite often need a customer to pay to engage with the product or the solution. I think books and I guess literature, popular culture play an important role in helping to popularize. Some of the science gets lost sometimes, but I think it's a critical turning point when people start referring to Matthew Walker or others in terms of what they've written, and starting to adapt or adopt that into their own workplace discussions or family discussions or discussions with friends.
Yeah, definitely, that's true. I think we are definitely on the right track. There will be more discussions happening, and hopefully those discussions will lead into actions. I think that's where
that's the important thing. The action bit is missing. We've got great evidence, there's great reports. Lots of them were pointed to in the report, the Parliamentary Inquiry. The question, and we'll get to the recommendations as well at the end of this, but yes, the question is what next, and who's actually going to encourage people to take action? What's going to be that trigger? There's a page I'm looking at here on the impact of digital. SleepFit is Australian, a Melbourne-based a company that have an app which helps to track and to provide insights on sleep. And they've called out here, we live in a world of constant digital stimulation and electronic entertainment, and many of us value alternatives to sleep higher than sleep itself. I can sometimes agree with that.
And this is a problem with technology, isn't it? We, from kind of entrepreneurship point of view, if you develop an app or if you build a new platform, what we want is to people to get hooked into it.
Yes, yeah.
But that's with the rise of social media and streaming services like Netflix, and there are so many of them now. Everything is built to get you addicted, hooked into it. So it really impacts other part of your life, because I mean, I was guilty of this at sometimes. Just having a really busy day, you just need change. You don't want to think. You sometimes just sit and go through a whole season in Amazon Prime in one night, and that's just unfortunate part of our lives now, and we really have to be a lot more disciplined around it. I think the key is to understand a lot of this new tech is designed to get you hooked into, addicted to it.
Yeah, yeah.
Constantly episodes coming in, the something to stimulate you all the time. So it's almost like a drug, I guess.
And I guess that's the challenge with the emergence of the business model where your attention is critical for their success.
Yeah, that's right.
They're all fighting for every moment that you're engaged with the device.
Yeah, that's right. And because of this competition from different players in the market, I think this will only get worse. They'll find more behavioral ways to get into that human attention. So the appeal from the technology will be higher and higher. So you will really have to be, I think, quite strong-willed to fight that and make sure you stick to your daily routines.
I'm just looking at a screen about the impact of the lack of sleep. So what does it actually do to you? And I've sort of asked you directly as well. And just a little quote here from the Australian Sleep Association. They stated that insufficient sleep affects the functioning of every cell in the human body. While there is a need for further research on the health impacts, available evidence suggests that insufficient sleep increases the risk of many serious health conditions, including obesity, as you mentioned, diabetes, cardiovascular conditions, and cancer.
Yeah.
Is that something you've seen much of, at least through the hospital system, in the roles that you've been working in?
Yeah, definitely. I think with people with sleep issues, we constantly see that association with diabetes or cardiovascular conditions. Sometimes it is a bit tricky to, and also, the mental health. We see depression and anxiety is very common. At times it is almost like chicken and egg, try to figure out whether, like what causes it, but correlation is definitely there. I think that's why I'm not sure whether people understand this, or they'd see as sleep is just a smaller part of their daily lives, but it plays a significant role in keeping you healthy and well.
Yeah, it's really important to call out that it's interesting. We focus so heavily on our health and well-being when we're awake, but not when we're asleep. And it's interesting. And we've talked about it in the past. You spend half your life sleeping, and yet how much do we plan and consider and prepare to ensure that, once again, as you mentioned before, quality, it's the quality of the sleep, not just the fact that you had some shut-eye.
Yeah, you're right. And the amount of things we do to make our awake part of our life better, whether it's your nice clothes or fancy cars, or supplements, and going to gym regularly, but how often we actually care about sleep itself. How might I sleep better? How might I improve my sleep? I do think there's a bit more awareness now. If you walk into a chemist or a pharmacy, you will see shelves full of different supplements that claim to help you to sleep. And the reason they are there, I think people keep buying them. So I think there's people try to put some band-aid solutions. And like I think we touched base that in previous episode as well. It's time to, I think, prioritize sleep and then build your life around that sleep part.
Yeah, strong. It's an important message there, building our lives around the sleep, because we've never done it before. But more importantly, no one's taught us to either, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I just want to call out this judgment and mental functioning. So the RACP is sort of called out. At least we were thinking more about the office situation and how does this lack of sleep impact you. So they call out a few things here. Sleep loss impairs cognition, psychomotor function, and mood. This can result in lapses in attention and clear focus, reduced motivation, compromised problem solving, confusion, irritability, memory losses, etc., etc. So there's quite a bit there. It feels like I'm experiencing a lot of that throughout the day. But sorry, my dog's going off.
No, that's all right. I think it's a great reminder the impact sleep has on our daily functions. Also, one of the reasons that I think one of the earlier slides you shared showed that there can be different reasons why you don't get enough sleep as well, whether it's work, we have discussed in the past, medical conditions, family situations, and also having pets. I think there were recent studies showing if you have your dog sleeping with you on the bed, like you get less hours of sleep. I mean, you don't need a study. I feel like it's common sense in a way. So there are a lot of things that contribute to the sleep issue, and that's why, like we mentioned in the past, and I think you mentioned a few times as well, we need to tackle this as a group, not just you have that support from your family, your partner, your workmate.
Yep, that's the next step for me.
Yeah.
And it's a message to my 7-year-old who's in the bed with us. Or rather, he pulls me into his bed. Economic impact, we talked about this already a little bit before. I'll just pull up on the screen that number, 66.3 billion.
Wow, yeah.
Total cost of inadequate sleep, and that's probably increasing. And it's probably something that, if we were more aware of it, where our tax dollars are going, then maybe that's something we might care about a little bit more. But unfortunately, like most things that go to a parliamentary inquiry, there's some time before any of that trickles down to impact. Just quickly wanted to mention the alertness CRC, so Collaborative Research Centre. So that was interesting to come across that there's actually a group that's got funding from government to help invest in and co-research, sponsor research in the space of alertness. But I think this is interesting. So I've sort of skipped to the end, which is the recommendations from the parliamentary inquiry. So there are 11 things that came out. You don't have to walk through all of them. Actually, I'll mention them because for those of you on the podcast, you can't see this. It's interesting to think of what has been put in place. So this is 4 years ago now. This was released. What's actually landed here in Australia, or what hasn't, or what were the recommendations, or actually what are the opportunities based on these recommendations? So there's 11 of them. The first one is develop a national sleep health strategy. There's number 2, establish a national sleep health awareness campaign. I haven't heard of any campaign yet, so maybe it hasn't landed. 3, improve sleep disorder diagnosis and treatment. 4, promote sleep-friendly environments. And that was really interesting because they also talked about the workplace. And, we hear about Google and, they've got sleep pods and things like that. So, and we talked about it, I think, in one of our first episodes around, shared an experience in Telstra where they actually did have a little sleep room. Some organizations have them, so that's really good. Apart from your own home environment, is important. Number 5, improve sleep education and training for health professionals. As you are aware, that the hospital workplace, like what's the value? Not that hospital workers don't understand the value, but I think the work, as we'll be talking about more often, is a strong driver of that. So The question is it about training the staff, or is it about changing how the organization prioritizes the sleep for everyone? Number 6, increase public awareness of the importance of sleep health. Sounds like the sleep health campaign. Support research into sleep health. So yes, well, you've got a CRC, more money, I guess. 8, address the impact of shift work on sleep health. So you've mentioned you've done sleep health before and it was hell. And I think in this report, they called out a lot of the impacts on shift workers in particular. Did you want to, you can...
Yeah, I think in regards to shift work, absolutely, it's probably the worst part of my work life is just shift work. Even though it's shift work, I don't think we can get rid of it. We will still have to do shift work in whether it's hospital or whatever the industry people are working in. problem is organizations should understand the impact of shift work having on their workers. That's where I think that's an area we have to work on, and provide them with tools and strategies that would minimize the impact it has. And there's a lot of research to support the negative impact of shift work. I know that I think Alertness CRC was doing some work a few years ago in that area, but hopefully there'll be proper strategies to address and the welfare of the staff, because I know in some instances they can't even bring that issue with the management because it was considered as a daily part of their life. Therefore, they should basically suck up and do it. It's not great. Yeah.
So what was the actual impact of doing shift work? So you still get sleep, right?
You get sleep. You would be sleeping during the daytime. So once again, it's associated with increased obesity because the metabolism rate would be lower when you sleep during the day. You will have the residual fatigueness. You will always be tired with you constantly changing your body clock. And some of the issues we discussed in our a podcast about social jet lag would apply here as well. Mental health risks, negative immunity wise, I think there are some studies showing that you could be more prone to, because it's almost your body pushing through shifting like 12 hours at a time. There's quality of life concerns around you would be sleep when the whole world's awake. So a bit of a connection aspect of things. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things. Yeah,
there's you miss out on the social side, so I guess you can't really connect with friends and family. That
absolutely
sort of thing.
That's right. Yeah,
that's wild. It's like you're living in a different world, isn't it?
Exactly, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Similarly, the impact of sleep disorders on mental health is something they want to have addressed. 10 was improve access to sleep health services in rural and remote areas. So you're saying that sleep is an emerging or is a fairly new studies area. What kind of sleep health services would they be talking about?
I think the problem with sleep, primary networks, especially so in GPs in Australia, a lot of them aren't trained in sleep. Therefore, they would. I think there's a bit of a lag in diagnosing patients, so providing them support. So I think sleep health services they mentioned here could be access to having that availability of sleep physicians, and also it could be more like telehealth sort of services as well too. When there's a problem, they almost not necessarily fast track, but they are in the right track to get the need. There's sleep psychologists now that support with issues like insomnia, but they're very rare, very limited number of resources, mainly around metropolitan cities. So there's a serious gap there.
Okay. And 11, finally, improve sleep health data collection.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty solid list. It's 4 years old now. Curious what comes out of this, but as we've sort of called out, there's probably some gaps there in terms of the roles for organizations, but the roles of community as well. And there's a lot of synergies there with that mental health side. I guess they're all connected from a health perspective, but this is probably one side, the sleep side, which is probably less understood, less prioritized, and much more in your control.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right.
Cool. So back to us now. I think that was a really interesting little meander through this parliamentary inquiry, but I think part of the direction we're taking as well is looking into, based on the challenge, the national, if not global challenge with sleep, what's the role of leadership to play in here? What's the role of organizations, and how can we be a little bit more focused on developing solutions in whatever shape or form that may be?
I think a problem with a lot of these government initiatives, it takes really long time for the action to come out of it. So you're right, it's been 4 years or 5 years now. That's put the, I think, accountability on the individual as well as the leaders out there to do the right thing. We can link all these reports, I think, in our show notes, and hopefully people can read and understand more, get into all the fine details, and hopefully that will help you to understand the problem itself. It's simple. It's a simple solution, and solution is very simple as well. And maybe that will lead you to, or drive you to, make the right calls around your workplaces and areas that you have the power to change.
Yep. And I think, as we've mentioned in the past as well, is it a conversation about sleep? Because sleep isn't the goal. The goal is for you to be fully functional and to be high performing and to achieve what you would like to achieve in life, which is something that people want to, I'm assuming, aspire to. It's just sleep itself is not the keyword or the topic that people want to get bogged down in. They want to see the end, but this is part of the how to get there.
That's right. I think you should treat sleep as a tool that help you to be more productive. Just think of it as your cup of coffee. That 8 hours you invest in it will give you more productive 8 hours during the daytime. So you don't have to rely on these stimulants, whether it's legal or illegal, to get through your days.
You need to come up with, when you say movement, and I think of things like, not to say that vegans are a movement, but if there's a word to describe, the lifestyle that prioritizes sleep in order to forego the band-aids for
That's
better
right.
living and achieving more, that's something that would, resonate with people. There's no, you don't have any rock stars saying, I get X amount of sleep. Well, actually, I think we did come across Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and some high-performing executives and CEOs. Maybe that's something we can dig into on another occasion.
Yeah.
Some people do, but I don't know whether or not yet that there's a I guess a popular culture view that, I want to be just like Bill Gates, and if I sleep more, I'll achieve what he's achieved. That correlation of being high performing and productive, and where that gets you probably isn't well understood, or not well understood, but probably less talked about.
Yeah, I think we should probably have a discussion on the productivity and what productivity is and how should we achieve those things. I feel like the sleep is probably not that sexy thing. Celebrities, people they talk and get that attention on. I think that's the problem, right? They'd rather go and talk about something else that can get attention. As you mentioned before, everything's in this current lifestyle is built around attention. So maybe it's a good thing, like we see people like Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos talk about those things, but it's not a bad thing probably that other people don't talk about it. We need to figure out that kind of right medium, get to more people, and keep this, you're right, like not necessarily a movement per se, but changing that mindset on well-being.
Yep. Cool. Now, this has been interesting. It's been a great foray into sort of like a few things that we've covered, but it brings together a lot of the things that we've talked about, and culminating in, actually, this is a really critical health issue. I didn't think that this would be talking about health so prominently in this. We do want to talk about the leadership side as well. But no, this has been great. Any final words for our audience before we sign off, Ashen?
Yeah, I think hopefully this episode will provide you why there's a need to address the sleep. I think we talked about a lot of the tools in the previous episodes. So definitely, if you have any other questions, reach out to us. We can message us from our socials, and we are definitely happy to identify what topics we should discuss in the future as well. and reach out, provide some feedback. We'd love